framework, we firmly believe that any decision should be made in the best interests of both parties and everything affected to it. In this way, our framework should be based on what is practical and what affects each country that is affected by the decision. Catalonia is an autonomous part of Spain, most well known for its popular city of Barcelona that rakes in tourism profits yearly. Catalonia is a huge economic provider for Spain, and yet they've created a referendum to leave Spain and become an independent nation. This would not only be detrimental, but a disaster for all countries involved. The economy would fail both Catalonia and Spain. The EU would omit Catalonia, and other nations would follow Catalonia's example and continue a vicious cycle of ruin. Contention 1. Catalonia independence would create an economic disaster. Subpoint A. Catalonia's succession would create a multitude of economic detriments to itself. Catalonia, as an autonomous nation, has never worried about maintaining its own separate economy. By leaving Spain, they would have to create an entirely new economy, with currency, trade, and banks. Over 2,700 separate bank firms have moved, including multiple major banks, says the Washington Post. Catalonia would have to create new banks and new currency to go along with it. It's unlikely they would be able to use the white trade euro, not without admittance to the EU as reportedly independent. According to Forbes, they'd have to assume that Spain's debt belongs to them, around $86.9 billion US. With an uncertain economy, the impact surrounding this would be significant. Catalonia is unprepared for independence, and the economic responsibility that comes with it. In separating themselves from Spain, they are setting themselves up for economic failure, depleting the economies of surrounding cultures and countries, especially Spain. Subpoint B. In addition to harming themselves, Catalonia would be negatively affecting its mother country. Spain depends on Catalonia for a large amount of their tax revenue and imports. Catalonia leaving would deprive them of these economical resources. In total, Spain's debt adds up to about $1.18 trillion US. Catalonia totals around 20% of Spain's GDP, making $262.96 billion US. Without these resources, Spain's economy would take a huge hit. Jobs would be lost in Catalonia and Spain, and general wealth would be depleted. It would be larger than the loss of California to the United States. Because Catalonia plays such a large role in overall Spanish economy, its succession would result in jobs lost, businesses falling under, and overall economic recession for Spain at the very least. Contention 2. Catalonia won't gain entry to the EU. Catalonia doesn't automatically receive entry to the European Union. The current members must unanimously vote for it, and if Catalonia leaves, Spain isn't very likely to vote for their inclusion. According to the Associated Press, the European Union supports a united Spain and no foreign countries behind Catalonia as separatists. Without becoming part of the European Union, Catalonia can't use the euro, among other things. Exclusion from the EU means that Catalonia loses a substantial amount of trade. 65% of exports and 70% of foreign investment in Catalonia is from the EU. For the U.S., a divided EU and exclude Catalonia isn't within our best interests. Americans have had to help the EU twice already in the past century. If it remains strongly united, the U.S. would have to do it again and risk money in order to help them. In order to best benefit the Union, Catalonia must remain a part of Spain. Contention 3. Catalonia independence created a domino effect. If Catalonia left successfully, that would draw other bodies to attempt the same. If Catalonia succeeds, nationalists in other European countries such as Scotland, Flanders, Pannonia, Moldavia, Bavaria, and Scania could begin to clamor for their own independence. Europe would end up dividing into endlessly smaller countries. The cameras is focused on Catalonia, and the areas vying for their own independence are waiting. Catalonia's succession could cause Europe to fall into continuous smaller microstates, which are more vulnerable to social, economic, and environmental disturbances. Because of the threats to Catalonia's economy, to Spain's economy, to the U.S.'s economy, the strength of the peace of the EU, and because of the potential for this money loss, vote calling for the resolution.
Are my opponents ready?
Yep.
Are my judges ready? Liam?
Yeah.
Okay. Using the wording of the resolution to provide a basis for our framework, we can see that when the resolution uses the word should, it implies the formation of a moral obligation. This idea of moral obligation implies a framework that is based solely off of morals, not off of fairness for both parties. Well, so when looking at this debate, the way the debate is framed should be based off of which solutions are the most moral. The 3 reasons you should vote pro and reject the resolution, accept the resolution are self-determination is an innate human right. International laws take precedent over state laws, and swift independence leads to a more stable economy. Contention 1. The principle to self-determination of the people is one of the fundamental human rights firmly established in international law. It's very much a matter of international concern and must be applied equally and universally. The right to self-determination is conferred on peoples by the international law itself, not by states. As its legal principle, not a precise rule, it embraces a high degree of generality and abstraction. International legal instruments relating to self-determination invariably refer to the peoples as being being allowed to the right of self-determination, being entitled to the right of self-determination. Thus, self-determination is a collective right. This exercise requires the expression of the freedom of people. The character of the United Nations declares this purpose to develop a friendly relationship among the nations based on respect for the principles, equal rights, and the self-determination of peoples. It is to take other appropriate measures to strengthen the universal peace. Everyone deserves the right to choose which social, economic, and cultural environment they want to live in, and stated in the evidence, this measure is taken to strengthen the universal peace and friendly relationships between different nations and give the people the choice to choose which international political nation they align with. It's their human right. Contention 2. Oh gosh. Contention 2. International laws take precedent over state laws. But many of us are blind to the fact that legal considerations doesn't mean that Catalonia as an area should not consider breaking loose. Legality is a Semitic trap designed to maintain the status quo, and many of the people are blind to that. Nationalists of established nations and states. We consider these to be the normal, rational entitles, but anything that challenges them is rational madness. Journalist Melaine Phillips claims that earlier this year, Scotland and Ireland did not have an example or a real claim in nationalhood the way Britain did. Along similar lines, Catalonia does not have a real claim to nationalism or nationalhood the way that Spain does. We usually consider anything made law to be moral, but we never question the authority and consider the idea that it may not be moral. It's not up to Catalonia to follow Spain's laws about separation and holding referendums, because if it was a legal pathway, this would never be created. International law takes precedent over state laws. For example, a state constitution may condone slavery and genocide, however, the international law prohibits both. And to say that state takes importance over the international is contradictory. Contention 3, swift independence leads to a stable economy. With all the uncertainty surrounding Catalonia's independence, the longer it takes to create, the more economic disparity it will make. The uncertainty over the independence drives in Catalonia could lead to a slower economic growth and lower job creation for the next few months in both Spain and Catalonia. The Bank of Spain said on Thursday, if the secession movement intensifies, drags out, it could have an economic outlook, and it would have an affect the economic outlook and financial stability of both Spain and Catalonia. Harming one's economy is not moral by any sense, and the longer it takes to allow Catalonia independence, the more it hurts the Spanish economy. They would lose jobs and businesses as well as money and growth rates of the economy. Looking at this in humanitarian light, it takes precedence over any other impact. With the referendum of Catalonia taking place, almost all of Catalonians wanting independence. Okay, thank you.
First two speakers, Crossfire.
Okay, so I have a first question.
Sure.
So you said earlier in your first contention or in your framework that fairness for both parties doesn't apply to moral situations. But is that true? Because if it affects multiple people, wouldn't you want all of the people to have a fair?
I said that fairness, or that looking at it in a humanitarian light is more important than looking at it from what's fair for both
But
parties.
isn't it?
Because realistically, no one's going to be happy all the time. So we need to look at it at what's going to best be a moral and good thing to do.
Well, isn't that what fair means? That it's as fair as we can be to each side. So if it's from a humanitarian lens, we would want each party affected to have as much benefits as possible.
Do you have a definition of moral?
No, do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you have a definition of should?
No.
Okay, can I ask the next question?
Yes.
Next question. In your first contention, you said they would assume Spain's debt. Why is that? If they're only 18% of Spain's, if they're only 18% of Spain, why would they just automatically assume Spain's debt?
Where does it say they're 18%? Because Catalonia is what's part of the debt, so
They would just assume all of Spain's debt.
No, they would not assume all of it. They would say they would assume most of it.
Why most of it if they're only a small percentage?
They're not, because they make up a lot of its economy. So by leaving Spain, they would have to take a lot of Spain's debt with them because they make up a lot of Spain's debt.
Okay, do you have sources for that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just move on then.
I mean, I have it if you want to see
Contention 3, you said that it would make a domino effect, and what's wrong with the freedom and equality of all people?
Because as we stated before, that means that the countries that are trying to split up from each other, it will create smaller, more weak countries which are more vulnerable to social, economic, and environmental disturbance.
The source to back up the fact
Yes,
that
we-
they would be a smaller, weaker country.
Well, if
And
they
then
were,
all the countries that are, like, could follow this domino effect would be smaller and weaker than what they're dividing from.
no, but if you're separating from a bigger country, you're gonna be a smaller country.
Well, yeah, if you don't really have any evidence to actually back up what you're saying, there's not much of an argument there.
Natalie, you need any data?
Nope.
Okay.
Alright. So, judges ready? Oh, yeah. Oh. Opponents ready?
Of course.
Alright, I'm just gonna, roadmap, I'm just gonna go top to bottom first on their case and then on to ours if there's any time left. Alright, so beginning with the framework, they talk about a moral framework and how we should consider the best interests of, like, we should consider the most humanitarian perspective. However, that does not take into account the fact that the most humanitarian perspective is the benefits for everybody. That it should account for the practical side, what benefits all sides. It's not just, what's morally correct. When making decisions, you need to consider the best interest of everybody, not just, one side or what's morally correct. You need to see the hard, practical benefits. With their contention, when they talk about self-determination and, while self-determination is a good thing, we can accept that self-determination is a good thing. They never say anything to tie it back to Catalonia. And even if they had, we have evidence that says that the Catalonian people have said no, that they use this right of self-determination to say no. Well, in the referendum vote in October, while 80.7% of the votes cast said yes, there was incredibly low voter turnout. About 43% of Catalonians actually went to the vote and voted, which means that we don't have the data that says that because the referendum was illegal and because the Catalan people didn't want to be involved and because they don't believe in that. So therefore, we can turn that to our case because the Catalan people have used their self-determination to say no to independence. Their contention too, they talk about how the laws aren't moral. And they specifically say that it's not Catalonia's job to uphold Spain's laws. However, it is their job to uphold Spain's laws because they are a part of Spain. They also talk about international law taking precedence, meaning that they should leave. That doesn't give any evidence for why they should leave about with international law taking precedence. That goes against their framework because therefore we rebutted that contention. Their contention 3, they talk about swift dependence, meaning leading to a stable economy. First of all, while that may be true, they provide no evidence for why Catalonia's secession would be a swift independence, which means that we don't have any evidence that says that it would be swift independence, which means that they won't have a stable economy. They give moral ideals, and yes, those are good things, but there's no application to Catalonia. Swift independence could lead to a stable economy, but there's no evidence for a swift independence. Moving back on to our case, practical framework, once again. Practical framework considers best interests of everybody, therefore it's a better framework, because when making any decision, you need to consider the best interests of all parties involved. Our contention 1, we talk about the economy, and so that's once again about how Catalonia would have, in the crossfire, we would talk about the Catalonia assuming Spain's debt. However, it's not all of Spain's debt, it's part of Spain's debt that belongs to them. The part of Spain's debt that they've accumulated, not just all of Spain's debt. That would be highly illogical for them to take all of it. From Bosch 17, Catalonia has amassed one of the largest public debts of Spain's regions at roughly 72.2 billion euros. However, Spain's total national public debt was priced at roughly 1.18 trillion US dollars. So that's the difference. Catalonia's not taking all of Spain's debt, it's just taking their portion of it. No EU entrance, once again, they don't address this at all. Catalonia would not be able to be a part of the EU, which means that they wouldn't have entrance to that, which means that they lose those trade agreements and they lose that membership to that. Contention 3, the domino effect. They don't have, we talk about the evidence in the crossfire, we actually have evidence for the microstates being weaker. Because they are so small and often isolated, the world's microstates are very vulnerable to social, economic, and environmental disturbances in the global system. Microstates are dangerously exposed to the vagaries of global marketplace, including price shifts of their primary exports. Many places threat of hurricanes, rising sea levels, and global climate change. With scant educational and technical capacity, they're in danger of being left behind by a fast-evolving world. These microstates aren't free. It's not a good thing for them to become microstates. And Catalonia leads, we inspire all these other places to widespread independence, leading to all these microstates everywhere in Europe, getting endlessly smaller and smaller, and adding to the turmoil and ruining this whole part of Europe and ruining this huge, leading to this huge economic disaster. Because of these reasons, we urge you to vote con for the resolution.
Okay. So a little off-time roadmap. I'm gonna go top to bottom on the opponent's case, and then we're gonna go back to our case and rebuild some of the stuff. So judges ready? Opponents ready?
Yep.
You ready, Rives? Awesome. Right. Okay. Big Daddy Riles. Okay. So when looking at this case, we have to look at the two frameworks that represent morality and practicality. Because our opponents failed to provide any evidence of why the framework should be used in the round, they have no evidence. We say we have evidence, clear evidence that why we should use should, because we have should in the resolution. Our framework is built into the resolution. They have no framework built in there. They pull out their framework out of nowhere. They have nowhere for their framework to be used. So therefore, our framework should be used in this round because we have evidence saying that because in the resolution it says should, it provides a moral obligation. They just say we should use practicality because that's what we want to use. They have no evidence of why their framework should be used over our framework. So our framework takes precedence over their framework in this round. So now onto their three contentions. So under their first contention, so they say they would create economic disaster, and they assume the fact that Catalonia would be forced to assume masses of Spain's debt, but why they never state how Catalonia got this debt. They never say does Catalonia use this debt to help the rest of Spain, or they never say anything about how Catalonia assumed this debt. They just say they have a lot of debt and they have to pay back. They never say how they used it. Without how they used it, we don't know where this debt should go. We don't know if they used it to help the rest of the Spain citizens, or to help the rest of the Spanish government, or do all these other with immigration things and things like that to help the rest of Spain. They never say anything about how Catalonia assumed this debt, and because they never say anything about how Catalonia assumed this debt and if this debt was used to benefit Spain or not, they never really know. They never really know if we don't really know if this debt is really viable or liable. They just say that this debt is here, so that's why I have to pay it back. They never say if it was used in Spain's interest or not. So then on to their second thing about the EU. Once again, so we never brought up anything about the EU. We never brought up any fact that they would be entering the EU, and therefore, like this contention is just basically a refutation. And because we never brought anything about the EU, we never said anything about they wouldn't be able to enter the EU, and we never bring up any positives or negatives about the EU. And they just mention the fact that we bring up the EU just so it looks like they're shooting us down. But we never even mentioned the EU once. Like, it's kind of contradictory to their case and to our case because it was never brought up into the argument. So then on to their final contention about the domino effect. They say that this would create a domino effect and therefore, it would hurt the rest of the world economies. But what they're failing to realize is now that this is based on morality, because their framework fails in this framework fails in this round because they have no evidence. When it's based on morality, we have to look at the freedom of the people, the freedom of cultures and things like that. People are being oppressed, and we have to look at that in the sense of morality. And because their framework of practicality fails, our morality framework takes precedence over there, and because morality and freedom of the people and freedom and free from oppression takes precedence over practicality, that's why their third contention fails. So now onto our contentions. So they say that Catalonians use self-determinism and say this to say no to leaving, but they never said that. They never have any evidence to say that the Catalonians said no to leaving. It says in the referendum that 90% of people actually wanted to leave. They never have any evidence saying that that Catalonians use self-determinism, say no. So that's a false fact that should not be listened to. And they start to attack our second contention about legal considerations don't matter. It's it's contradictory to their point. No, because we're saying that laws are not always moral. And laws aren't always things that you have to follow, and that's what our opponents failed. And that's what our opponents failed to realize, that laws are not always moral. And they're saying, because you're going against the laws, that's immoral. That's what they're failing to realize. Laws are not always moral, and that's what our opponents need to realize. So then we also say swift independence leads to a stable economy. Yes, we didn't say how swift it would be, but they also they never say anything about if it would take a long time. There's no evidence on any side. So really, there's no chance for them to shoot down our argument in that sense. So then, kind of rewrapping this up, you should vote for pro because all their contentions fail in our framework, because all their contention and their framework fails overall because they have no evidence supporting their framework. But our framework is basically built into the resolution. Thank you, and vote pro.
Okay, last two speakers, please.
Oh, yeah. You can have the first question. Yeah.
So when you were
talking about when you were addressing our first contention, you were talking about the debt, and you said how you were like asking like how Catalonia used it. Can you like clarify that, please?
Oh yeah, so I'm asking like, how do we know that Catalonia didn't use this debt to help the rest of Spain? Like, we don't know if the Catalonia used this debt, you know, like to help with the immigration things, or to help Spain like with their military and things like that. Like, we don't know, so without knowing, like, we can't really surmass like an amount of debt, and like without knowing like the amount of like you bring up a number, but we have no clue how any of that was used, and because Catalonia is part of Spain, that debt could have been used to help Spain as a whole. Like, you'd never know, and Spain could be used, like, we never know if that debt could be used as a ploy, so when Catalonia leaves, they take a lot of Spain's debt. Like, there's no evidence to say that, like, how it's used. So, okay, so then you say, you say that, like, 43% of, like, people, like, didn't turn up. Do you have any evidence for that? Like, how, like, 43% of people didn't turn up? Because, yeah.
So, hold on. I don't have the exact.
Okay, so you're just getting it from a previous round. I mean, if you don't have any evidence, you said that 43% of people showed up, and that was mentioned in a previous round, but if you don't have the actual evidence, don't bring it up. So then, on to, so also you said that self-determinism, you're like, oh, like they're saying self-determinism to say no. Do you have a source in that? Like, you have saying that they use self-determinism exactly to say no?
Self-determination is the right of being able to choose. That's your exact definition of it. And so therefore, because the Catalan people have decided to, you know, use this referendum, you know, the vote, which is their voice, which is their self-determination. If we don't have that clear number, then we don't have that self-determination being used to say yes to Catalonia leaving, and we don't have the evidence for Catalonia for that self-determination being used to say no to Catalonia leaving. It's kind of like a.
But they didn't say no to Catalonia leaving.
But they didn't say yes to it either.
That 90% of people said yes.
But it was really low voter turnout.
How do you know that? There's no evidence.
Do you have the evidence for how many people turned out?
No, but we have an evidence of 90% of people showing up, and 90% is
90%
a positive. You're just making inference that a lot of people didn't show up, and like we have actual evidence that says 90% of people showed up.
Where's
and like,
your evidence for that?
Would you like to see our case? Is that what you're asking for? Are you asking to see our case?
I'm asking to see the evidence for 90% of people showing up.
Just find it really fast. Okay, so my partner's gonna find that for you guys really fast. So, so yeah, you know, we're saying that 90% of people showed up, and like, and you're just saying, oh, it was low voter turnout, but you have no evidence that it was low voter turnout. Like, you can't say that unless you have evidence.
Okay. Do you have evidence for Catalonia being able to become independent swiftly?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, no. Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, we said that we have no evidence for that, but you have no evidence that it would take a long time.
Okay,
So
so
therefore,
you're
the
the same
argument
thing.
is
You're bringing
no.
up evidence that you don't have because you're using.
No, I never said, I never
It's time.
once,
Let me find it. It's like
yeah,
right here.
it's right here.
Downtime now?
Yeah, can I see their case?
Yeah.
Which part? What do you need to see?
Like the entire thing. I just want to check for your evidence.
Okay, this is our evidence.
That's like okay.
That's just evidence.
Does it say on there like where you're using each thing?
We have the separate contentions. We have them labeled under the contentions.
Sorry, it's Talia's speech, right?
Yeah.
Talia, do you need downtime?
Yes.
Yeah, you guys haven't used any yet. So.
Okay. Everyone ready? Okay. So our opponents say that the moral lens we should look through is a the lens framework we should look through is a moral lens. However, that doesn't necessarily, just because the way our framework is worded means that we adhere to that as well. So they say that they said in one of their contentions that harming economy is not moral in any way. We obviously, even if you do believe in their framework, we obviously can cohere to that as well, because we provide evidence of why Catalonia's economy will be Catalonia and surrounding countries' economy will be affected. So they say our case, the EU case contention we have is a rebuttal. However, that is not true, because we provide an impact for why not getting entry to the EU is a bad thing. If we just said that they won't get entry to the EU and didn't provide a reason for why that is a bad thing, then that would be a rebuttal. However, we say that because if they don't get when they don't gain entrance to the EU, that it provides 65% of exports and 70% of foreign investments in Catalonia, which it will severely affect their economy. Now, they have a rebuttal contention themselves. In their second contention, they talk about international laws taking precedence, but they don't establish why that means that Catalonia should split from Spain. They don't establish why that is a moral thing for Spain to let go of Catalonia. Back to our contention. So our first contention, that it would be an economic disaster, that still stands. Both Spain and Catalonia will be severely affected from it. And again, as we said, it won't get into the EU. For contention 3, Catalonia independence creating no domino effect. They don't address how this is a bad thing. They don't rebut against it. So that still stands. And for their first contention about self-determination, yes, they have a right to choose. However, that does not necessarily mean that they should be split from Spain.
Rosie, downtime?
How much do we have?
You have full 2 minutes left.
30 seconds. Can you see that evidence?
Yeah, it's on my because this is an old copy, so I'm pulling it up from my computer.
Okay. How much was that?
Sorry, that was a minute. You have a minute left.
Okay. Let's do this. I think I'm gonna go down their case first and then back up ours. Okay, so looking over their evidence, I saw that they use sources such as independent.com and Debating Europe, which don't really seem like reliable sources because those are just the first things that pop up on Google when you search the debate. And then their domino effect, they say that we don't refute it all, but we do, saying that it's bad because not only do they not have evidence for the fact that there will be a domino effect, they're just taking an opinion statement and making it into like, this terrible thing is going to happen due to this domino effect, which is a possibility, but they have no evidence to back that up. And then their contention 2, we do refute, because they say that they won't get accepted into the EU, but we never brought up the fact that they would be accepted into the EU, or that they needed to be accepted into the EU. They don't actually have any evidence to back up the fact that they would be dropped from the trading of the EU, and they say that they'll have to use their own currency, which doesn't seem to be a problem for a lot of other countries that don't use the same currency. So, in their contention 1, they say that it would create an economic disaster, and saying that we should look at this in a fairness for both parties. But an economic disaster, they have no evidence to back up the fact that it would be an economic disaster. They just say that it would be bad for Spain, which sucks for Spain, but it's not an economic disaster. And then they say that they don't really have any sources for either of that either. So I'll go back up ours now. Contention 1, they talk about how Catalonia is like specifically saying no to the people like voting, but they have zero evidence to back up the fact that 43% of voters, as they say, turned out like only 43%. But without evidence, that argument's kind of invalid. And then our second contention, they say that international laws don't take precedent over state laws, but in the UN's like specific like outlining thing, they specifically say that they need to develop friendly relationships among other nations based off the principle of equal rights and self-determination. So they're saying that self-determination doesn't matter either, but that's not true because like it's the right for people. They're saying that like the people don't want the self-determination because they didn't turn out for this, but they don't have any evidence to back up the fact that they didn't turn out for this. They're just kind of making that up.
Here's our evidence on it's under referendum.
Okay, we've got Grand Crossfire, 3 minutes. All 4 debaters, please stay seated.
So
Okay.
it doesn't say that 90% of people turned out. It says 90% of those who voted were in favor of a split, not 90%
That's
of
what we
people showed
said.
up.
Yeah, no, we never said 90% of
We said
people
that
said that. We said
90%
90%.
did say 90%.
No, okay, that
Okay,
was
he
a
messed
misspoke.
up, like,
Yeah, that was a
we
miss.
specifically
thing.
said
Well,
the
I-
first time that
yeah.
90% of people that voted said yes to it. And with actual evidence to back up the fact that 90% of people did say yes, that's kind of a valid argument versus your 43% argument.
It's just out of nowhere.
So
No, wait, you guys have a question yet? Because we kind of, yeah.
what would you define like a rebuttal contention as?
Like, what I would define that as is that we never brought it up in our case, and the fact that you decide to bring it, like, it's something that, like,
It's
it's,
its own point.
yeah, I know what you're trying to say, that it's its own point, but something that, like, is like that would say, like, oh, like, going into the EU would, like, help them, and then you're saying, like, oh, not, like, it's just, like, kind of like a contention that really has no presence to our case and not really relevant unless we bring up the fact that the
And
EU.
because
Well,
it's
no,
not-
because
it's
it's
not-
going against it's about the resolution. It's basically saying that economically that this would be bad for Catalonia because they won't gain interest in you. It's saying you should vote con because they will be affected
we never
negatively from
brought-
it.
we
It doesn't
never
matter if
brought
you brought it
up.
up because it's its own point. It isn't connected to your case, which is why
If it's not
in it.
connected to the case
Yeah, like,
itself,
like
which
no,
it's
but the
not,
thing is,
it
like, it's
doesn't-
like you're trying to, like, say, like, oh, because, like, you know, they're not gonna get in the
Well,
EU. No, because it's like they're not getting in the EU. It's gonna be bad for them. But we never say that, like, going into the EU would be. And like you're trying to say, like, oh, like economically, like that's gonna like it's gonna be bad for them. But like it's like it doesn't really have any precedence unless like we bring up the fact like the EU, unless we bring up the fact like the EU is something that would be bad. And you're saying that it would be bad, but like, I mean, like, yeah, could I see your evidence on that it would be like harmful to them, like.
Okay, and then for your first contention, you say that your first contention is it would create an economic disaster, like worldwide.
Can I see the evidence for the EU part?
Yeah, contention 2 here, I think most specifically is Martin in 2017.
Okay.
Alright.
And then if you said it would create an economic disaster, do you actually like, how would it create an economic disaster?
That's a bit of hyperbole. It's not necessarily saying it's going to be this huge, big disaster that's going to
So
tear
it's
down the
not
world
gonna be-
market.
It's not
However,
going to
it's
be an
still,
economic disaster.
it's still going to be harmful. It's still going to be very
It's
harmful.
going to be harmful to one country.
And how is that not moral? How is that moral?
Because
for it to be
morality means
harmful?
looking at everybody. Morality doesn't mean just focusing in on one person. It means looking at everybody.
Okay, so then how is it moral to disregard one side's?
We're not disregarding it. We're saying like, you say that it's creating an economic disaster. The point of me bringing this up is because you say it's going to be an economic disaster, but it's not going to be an economic disaster. It's going to affect Spain negatively, but like it's not an economic disaster.
But then how?
That's time. Natalie, you still got full 2 minutes if you want it for downtime.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, to begin, we must look at the voting issues. How we need to weigh this. We need to weigh the morality of this because we're accepting the framework. We need to weigh the morality of this, and we also need to weigh the application to both Catalonia and Spain in this. Our opponents bring up morality, but without evidence to back up their sides. Their case is full of what ifs and shoulds. They talk about the morality of self-determination and the morality of swift independence and leading to a stable economy, but they don't have the evidence to back it up, and they don't apply it to Catalonia or Spain. They keep mentioning our lack of evidence when we actually do have evidence, and they also keep missing out on their evidence. They also don't have evidence to back up their cases, which is completely and wholly hypocritical. They keep talking about our rebuttal contention without taking into account that our case doesn't revolve around theirs. Our case is not based on theirs. Our EU contention stands entirely independent of their case. It doesn't revolve around their case. And so it's not a rebuttal contention because it's not meant to rebut anything of theirs. Just because they don't bring it up doesn't mean that it's a rebuttal contention. And so weighing the application like Catalonia and weighing the application to morality, our case stands strong and firm because we consider all sides, which they just said in the crossfire is moral. It's moral to consider both sides. Well, they keep mentioning that Spain would be harmed, and then they keep disregarding it, even though they say that they're for the moral side, and they keep talking about how Spain is going to suffer negatively, but then they just ignore that fact in favor of Catalonia leaving. While our case, our side of the resolution stands firm because it takes into account Catalonia and Spain and how how they would remain stronger and still remain beneficial if Catalonia remains within Spain. Therefore, because of these things and because our case stands strong within morality and within application to Catalonia in Spain, we urge you to vote con for the resolution.
Liam, you've got 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Down
I'm gonna
time.
take it all.
Would you like to see any
No,
of
no,
our
no, no, no,
evidence?
no, no. Hold on. Wouldn't matter. Anyways, but like.
We have a minute, right?
You have a minute and a half still remaining.
Which I think you're drops that.
This is my last time doing it. I'm gonna scream.
How much time do we have?
You've got a minute, 5 seconds.
Let's use it. Let's use all of that bad boy right now. I don't know.
How sad.
So we're not talking. It's okay though. Okay, if you're good, go for it.
I wanna wait. I might as well wait.
45 seconds.
It's that hard.
8:40.
Yeah. This shit doesn't work. Nope.
I'll actually try it. Okay. Are you ready?
Hey, well, how much time do I have left?
20 seconds.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna do some take pressure right now. We're just having fun with it. This has been fun. Time?
Compete at any
5 seconds.
I don't know.
What's the next?
And that's time.
Okay, so for the judges, I'm gonna do a little off-time roadmap.
It just makes it better because you say off time.
We'll go top to bottom on their case, and then go back to our case and go top to bottom. Judges ready.
Hold on, guys.
Opponents ready. Partner ready? Okay. When looking at this resolution, we have to look at it in the light of morality because they did drop their framework. In the end of their final focus, they decided to drop their framework. So first off, their framework was dropped. And now going on to one really big thing they said in their final focus, they're like, oh, they didn't have any evidence. And they're like, okay, you want to go there? Let's go there. Okay, you say we don't have any evidence. You have no evidence. I asked you for evidence for 3 times. I asked you for 43%. No evidence. Did they say no? No evidence. Directly impact Spanish economy? No evidence. So if you want to go to no evidence, you asked me for one piece of evidence, and I gave you that piece of evidence. So let's talk about evidence. So then, going on to your contention. So with your first contention, so you say like create economic disaster. Like again, you never bring up any specific evidence that would create an economic disaster. And then on to your second contention, like you say that the only thing you say about your second contention is that it's not a refutation contention. In the end of your final focus, you never reaffirm your second contention. You just refute what we said about it. So you never really affirmed your second contention, so therefore you dropped it. And then onto your third thing, you say about domino effects, and then you go on and like the domino effect thing was never really addressed. And although you didn't drop it, you didn't really push it on a hard thing, so it's not really dropped. It's just not. It ends up kind of being void. So then onto our argument. So self-determinism. They say, oh, they say self-determinism is a thing, and we're saying that they're using it to. We're saying that they're using it to protect their moral right, and that we're saying that, and they're saying that that they used it to say no. They never bring up any evidence of that, and therefore our self-determinism takes precedence over their first one. And then legality considerations don't matter. They never even question that. They just say it's not moral, and we're just saying it's morally go against the law. And we never said, and therefore they're making the assumption that all laws are moral, and that's where they're wrong. And legal considerations don't matter. Whatever Spain says that's maybe illegal or legal doesn't matter in this case. And then swift independence leads to a stable economy. Well, we never have any evidence that it'll be swift, and they never have any evidence that it'll take a long time. So really, there's no really argument there. So that contention may be dropped, but we have 2 contentions compared to their 1.5. So please, vote pro. Thank you.